My name is Derek Hooper, and I'd like to introduce you to the Diversity Toolkit. The toolkit is designed to help organizations increase and work successfully with diversity. There are 4 episodes in the toolkit. They were all scripted and filmed during the corona crisis. And that's relevant because the crisis has exposed many examples of institutional discrimination, and in particular structural racism. In addition, we've been witnessing the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement in both the US and here. And along with the recent examples of Grenfell and Windrush, and the many examples of disproportionate policing in black communities, the focus has once again turned onto institutional discrimination. Even today, there's a report that 83% of BAME people in sport have experienced racism. None of this will be a surprise, particularly to our BAME colleagues and students. 2020 is also the 21st anniversary of the inquiry into the murder of Stephen Lawrence, which first introduced us to the concepts of institutional racism and structural discrimination. So this toolkit is about structural discrimination, about organization and culture change. It's not about individual prejudices or biases, whether conscious or unconscious. Our focus is therefore leadership and line management, because these are 2 critical ways to eliminate discrimination and increase diversity. There are 4 episodes in the toolkit. The first episode is Diversity Context, and this is primarily for senior leadership teams. Episode 2, Diversity Traps, is mainly for all managers, and Diversity Practice also for all managers. Diversity Organization, the 4th episode, this is for mainly senior leadership teams. The episodes can be viewed either online on your own or as a group, for example as part of a team meeting or part of a training session. All the situations are real, all the examples are real, and they're based on situations we've come across numerous times over the last few years. I hope you find all 4 episodes useful. We'd welcome feedback from you. As the toolkit's primarily about leadership, its audience is by definition senior leaders and not staff further down the line. It's for those with the power to make change and those who are charged with responsibility and authority to do so. And finally, it's a great chance to build on all the examples of good equality practice over the decades, which individuals have achieved, often against the odds. It's dedicated to them for their creative, imaginative, and brave work, and some of you, like me, will have worked with them and been inspired by them. So here we go with episode 1, and Fox Fisher is here to introduce it. They will take us through the context for good diversity line management.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 1 of the Diversity Toolkit. This episode sets out the context for good line management. There are 3 core criteria for good practice on diversity and line management: a clear line management scheme, strong diversity leadership, and a clear diversity narrative. A clear line management scheme. So first we can look at how line management works in your organization. These questions set the scene. Do you have an explicit line management scheme? How do new managers know what is expected of them? What is the recommended format and the frequency of meetings? How are they monitored? How is diversity included? How is it talked about in line management meetings? These questions may well be covered in your line management guidance. Some colleges have a line management contract, a written commitment signed by the manager and the managee. This certainly works well in our experience. A scheme or a contract can support diversity because it can ensure consistency of support for staff and clarity on what they are entitled to. It can promote a specific management style. This can make discretion less random and more susceptible to personal bias, and less likely that an individual manager would do things their own way, because it's often in areas of management discretion that discrimination occurs wittingly or not. A uniform style of management can also rein in negative behaviors such as an overzealous pursuit of targets, the setting of inconsiderate work overloads, and bullying and microaggressive patterns of behavior. And finally, line management has to be accountable, and a scheme or contract can more easily be checked by a senior manager. Check that it is happening regularly, fairly, and within the framework of your values, and that it proactively covers equality and well-being as well as targets and performance. 2. Strong leadership on diversity. We believe there is a link between line management, leadership, and diversity because talking about diversity and equality in line management meetings is much easier when there is already an easy and positive public conversation about diversity within the organization. Setting out this narrative is where leadership comes in. Without strong leadership, diversity is much harder for individual managers to support. Good diversity leadership has 4 important features. Firstly, it uses a narrative which is positive rather than negative. It's about what we can do rather than what we mustn't do. Secondly, it is professional. It's about what staff do in their day jobs, not about their personal attitudes and preferences. It is based on the organization's values, not the personal views of staff. Thirdly, it's proactive. Like all good leadership, it takes a stand, takes a lead, and shows the way to go. And lastly, it's practical. It's about getting things done which make a difference. This approach has a strong chance of preventing a diversity vacuum which becomes filled with personal views and random biases. And we're on solid ground here because research shows that organizations with strong diversity leadership do make the most progress on diversity. 3. Clear narrative on diversity. Diversity thrives on clarity, everyone knowing what it means. This starts by defining what words such as equality, diversity, inequality, and inclusion mean without using jargon, saying them in a way that makes sense to the audience, and using simple language which avoids overused cliches. Diversity needs to be talked about in practical ways, with its reasons and benefits clearly described, in confident ways, with language which is unembarrassed and up to date. This takes away the trepidation, the sense of walking on eggshells. In specific ways, this helps to avoid general, impersonal categories such as communities or minorities or the disadvantaged, and instead using people words, for example, Black and Asian students, trans and non-binary staff, etc. In human ways, by talking about people rather than issues. So poor families may be better than disadvantaged groups or the hard to reach, in ways that tell stories and paint pictures. And finally, in inclusive ways, talking about us and we rather than them. Most of all, though, the narrative is clear because it's about the things that we do, actions and outcomes, and who benefits from them, rather than commitments and intentions, which can be very vague, remembering that no one benefits from our commitment. So in summary, in this episode, we have covered 3 important prerequisites for success on diversity: a clear line management scheme, strong diversity leadership, a clear narrative.